You're listening to the Salty Sex Cast with Mariah and friends. Minimize the fear. Expand your awareness.
Hello, and welcome back to the Salty Sex Cast. If you're just tuning in, welcome. I'm Mariah, and I'm a nationally board certified health and wellness coach and a certified health education specialist. I have a mission of spreading information that is really going to help you empower your sexual journey and sexual wellness and stigma and fear, and really just arm you with the information you need to take back that power. So I invite wonderful guests to help me with that mission. And today I have Brooke Hazen, who's an organic farmer, a fitness expert, and author of You Are Not Broken, a holistic guide for men and women to heal the pathways of sexual dysfunction and restore relational harmony. Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So I'm really excited that more and more people are out there saying, hey, what we have is not working. The solutions really are a quick Band-Aid, and sometimes they create more problems, and I'm not going to stand for it. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey of what brought you to me today and everything in this book.
Well, it's interesting what you said about empowerment and fear. That is exactly what my book is about, is empowering us and to strip ourselves of the fears that are holding us back from transformation in our lives. My story started a number of years ago when I started experiencing symptoms of erectile dysfunction. And I didn't know what to do. I felt totally scared. It was one of the most difficult times of my life. And I reached out to my naturopath and was automatically prescribed pharmaceutical ED meds. And at the time I thought that was, I guess, the only really solution out there being offered, especially if a naturopath's offering it. But I found that I was getting side effects, and they were debilitating side effects that were not conducive to, my own personal growth of my heart and soul, and it just did not work for me. So I kept trying different pharmaceuticals and even natural drugs, and I felt like a lab rat. It was one of the most horrible times of my life where I had side effects, and I was so scared, trying so desperately to restore my sexual health, but really no reason why I was experiencing this. It was kind of a nightmare. And Western medicine really had no answers for me. I was all on my own. And that's because we'll go into that later, but there's a lot of reasons why it's basically symptomatic reductionist, approach to medicine. And they never get to the root cause of what is causing something. So my book is all about getting to the root cause of what's causing everything in our lives: sexual dysfunction, physical dyshealth in our lives, and relational dysfunction. So anyways, I went through this period of trialing these different drugs, and I really came to almost the end of the line. I was getting very depressed, and I started praying to God, because I've always been a very spiritual person my whole life, and I've always communicated with God, but never in such a desperate moment like this, with so much on the line. So this was the first true test of my life. And I still had an element of control in my prayer. I was praying specifically for a drug that could give me healthy sexual function without side effects. It was pretty specific. And I even thought at one point I had one, but that turned out to have side effects too. And so at that point, I really had reached the end of the line. There was really nowhere else to go. I fell into a depression for weeks at a time. And it was a scary time for me. And I continued to pray, but this time I prayed completely go and said, Lord God, I do not have any answers anymore. I am at the end of the line. I'm completely dependent on you to help me through this process. Can you please give me a healing miracle? And I started praying for a healing miracle at that point because there was nothing else I could do. And in that moment of letting go is when my journey started. It took some time, but I started a journey of knowledge and learning and a transformation of not only my sexual health, but my physical and relational health too. That process of letting go is actually what are the most foundational teachings in my book in the beginning that are completely free. It's a process of letting go of our addictions, our attachments that are negative, our cultural and peer pressure that we experience from family, from even corporations, and also the myths and misconceptions that hold us back from becoming the beings we're truly meant to be. Because what we're experiencing now is Western culture is approaching our most foundational parts of our lives upside down and backwards. So, for example, when it comes to pornography, it's destroying neurology, relationships, and leaving men impotent. When it comes to our behaviors in relationships with sex, such as mating behavior, which I'll get into later. Mm-hmm. Mating behavior is undermining and poisoning long-term, sustainable, deep connected relationships. When it comes to our diet, it's actually perpetuating disease, comorbidities, and death at appalling rates. When it comes to our healthcare, we're just hovering around the symptoms and people are just remaining sick with side effects. In fact, in some ways, it's even making people more ill without ever getting to the root cause and transformation solutions that we need.
Yeah.
And it's all simple. We're talking about a free and simple process that doesn't cost any money. It's all about letting go of addiction to pornography, addiction to ejaculation, to these dopamine destructive cycles, to certain foods, to how often we eat, to even donating blood. These are all free and simple, but because of the pressures that are exerted upon us, we are not doing this when it's so easy to do. And that's why I want to empower people. Once they enact these teachings in the first part of my book, this is the catalyst for a massive transformation that not only I went through, but millions of men and women can go through too.
Mm-hmm. You said something that was, very relatable, I think, for a lot of people of, I had something that changed for me. Either I wasn't performing as expected, that kind of thing. So I went to someone who I trusted to have a unique or different answer that wasn't quite, medication symptom related. And you found that was still the avenue that was traveled upon and wasn't fulfilling. You said something where you're like, I just wanted a fix without more problems. And how many people don't even go seek a fix because they know so many of them come with negative side effects, or I have to give up my lifestyle, or I'm going to be told I'm doing all the wrong things and it's going to be more shame-based again, where I'm trying to avoid, when really I'm hearing letting go of a lot of those expectations, letting go of a lot of those negative societal norms that aren't serving you. And where some people are here, I have to change my lifestyle. I have to eat a vegetable now and again. I don't want that. They're going to stay where they're at until they start realizing what behaviors are fueling some of those dysfunctional outcomes.
Yeah, we need to have a clean mind and neurology for God's light energy to come into us, and for healing to take place on a cellular level within us. That light energy that heals us is the healing energy of God ultimately. And the dopamine addiction, which, largely men, there's women too that are experiencing porn-induced erectile dysfunction, which is the largest growing segment of sexual dysfunction in the country, in the West right now. Again, Western medicine has no clue how to handle this, doesn't even know what's going on. They don't even know why. There's this massive result of, it's pretty clear that this is the end result of 2 decades now of the pornography experiment. And it's leaving fields of immobilized and disembodied young men incapable of fulfilling a relationship on any level, because their neurology has been hijacked by this incredibly powerful super stimulus, dopamine destructive addiction to pornography.
Instant gratification.
And I'm not overstating that this is in fact an addiction. Neurologically, what is taking place with the porn-induced erectile dysfunction is that, and I'm going to say mainly men, because the statistics are that 80% of men watch pornography weekly, and roughly 26% of women. So there's definitely, while most men and women are more closer and statistically to initially watching pornography, it's generally men that get addicted long-term and continue to go in a cycle of addiction with pornography in higher instances. But pornography is incredibly geared for destroying men's neurology and relationships, because it's geared specifically for each individual's brain. So pornography, each individual actually selects something that stimulates them. And there's a lot of novelty. So this goes with what we call the mating behavior and the bonding behaviors, which we're going to talk about when we get into relationships. But mating behavior is, by definition, if we define it, is basically it's that mammalian part of our brain that's instinctive, that its end goal is to spread maximum genetic diversity to a largest plethora of novel mates possible, in order to spread that genetic diversity. And obviously that's not what we're after in life and in relationships. But pornography is doing just that. See, the way that the brain works, it cannot differentiate between a physical addiction to cocaine or morphine, and a neurological addiction to the superstimulus of pornography and ejaculation to pornography. And it's actually the ejaculation that has incredible effects too, not only in pornography, but destructive effects in the relationship. It's a process I'll go into, but going back to the dopamine cycle, the other thing the brain cannot differentiate between is the fantasy that's taking place and reality. So men actually believe, I'm going to say men again, men actually believe they're waging a successful campaign of, mating with a huge diversity of women, that they are actually ejaculating to. They believe they are actually mating with these women. The brain does not differentiate whether that's real or fantasy. So what you have are men that are actually deeply in, I won't call it relationship, but they're in a sexual relationship with a large diversity of novel mates. And so their neurology, their dopamine is decreasing to such low levels that it's equal to what we experience with the levels of morphine and cocaine addicts. So that's where it's a true addiction, and we don't recognize that in Western society, that this really is an addiction on par with cocaine and morphine addictions, just like lots of dopamine addictions, but the science shows that. It's incredibly destructive.
Yeah, it's one of those that you hear, and we talk about fear and stigma a lot on the podcast, and those statistics and that comparison to science of how it affects your brain can trigger a fear response for some people, and they can start. I'm sure even some folks who are listening to this podcast right now are saying, I watch porn and I'm fine, or, I'm not going to change my behaviors because I do enjoy this. So I want to just touch on a little bit about how we can use the knowledge that we're talking about today to create choice, and how that can, asking yourself, what is it about this, that I am drawn to, and how do I get that in real life? Or how do I find something that's going to fulfill me, that's not going to leave me empty and feeling like I'm craving more of it later, if I'm just video after video or something like that. I really want to definitely empower others for that choice, and create the awareness around, we know there is scientific proof about what happens in your brain when you're unconsciously consuming and abusing this porn, just this media.
So, okay. Before I get into that, I also want to talk about, I don't think women understand the immense toll that ejaculation takes on men, but the moment that a man ejaculates, a neurological and physical refractory and replenishment period starts, which is very intense. It pulls all the most vital resources from our body to replace the sperm. During climax, dopamine rises to high levels, and then at ejaculation, dopamine levels crash. And this is just the semen release part. It's not necessarily ejaculation. It's just the actual semen release, because the semen is so powerful and packed with so many nutrients, hormones, growth factors, and the dopamine drop, that happens after ejaculation is so intense that it causes a process that weaves up and down for 2 weeks of mood imbalance, distancing, and fatigue, as well as irritability and even anger. So anyways, going back to what you said about empowerment and hope, there absolutely is empowerment and hope. And first, talking about pornography, the hope is that there's hundreds of thousands of young men and women, and men and women of all ages, that have joined the NoFap forums, and that's NoFap, nofap.com. These are forums that empower us to come together and to choose a different reality that's free of pornography. So what we do, I've gone through this school myself. We do a 90-day challenge, which is called No PMO, and that's short for No Pornography, Masturbation, Orgasm. So that's ejaculation for men, orgasm for women, because there are women that are addicted to pornography too. And my book is definitely written for men and women, just want to add. So anyways, during this 90-day process of completely letting go of those addictions to pornography and ejaculation and orgasm and masturbation to pornography, we go through immense transformations. It is challenging for a lot of men to make it through this process. There's many men and women that grapple very hard over and over and over with relapse back on pornography, even though they know the benefits that they can get from it. But basically, what we have discovered is that we are tired of living in a virtual reality where we've sacrificed relationships. We're not even able to have intimacy with real partners. We're tired of living in a fantasy of pixels on a screen. we give all that up to have a reality in front of us. We want to have healthy, deep, connected relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of these men and women that graduate from the 90-day NoFap, it's called monk mode challenge, they actually will go on to Karetsa, Tao, and Tantra practices in their relationship, which is semen retention. And that's what we'll get into next, is the hope and empowerment for having healthy relationships, because this actually ties together. Having healthy sexual behaviors and healthy relationships are incredibly linked because of this same process that happens in relationships, where practicing mating-based behaviors with the sole goal of ejaculation actually causes a similar distancing in the relationship, and ultimately searching for novelty again, for novel mates. This again goes to this mating behavior of searching for maximum genetic diversity to cast thy seed.
Yes.
You know, it's not what we're looking for. So what we are doing is we're taking on what Karetsa, Tao, and Tantra have been practicing for millennia, which is semen retention and bonding behaviors. And that's what we'll get into next, or bonding behaviors.
Yeah. Before we move to that, I would love to hear, I mean, you didn't just write this book because you had, hey, a little bit of health hiccup. You have experienced a lot of everything that you are talking about. So the pornography, and wanting that connection. So everything that you're saying, I'm seeing it in your face even. This is something that you have experienced yourself and have truly wanted that deeper relationship, have wanted to find more connection, that kind of thing. But I would love to hear, what was that experience for you? What were some of those struggles or thoughts going through, while you were going through your monk mode and things like that? Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yes. So this process was unfolding in the most beautiful and profound way. Every day that I went practicing semen retention and refraining from virtual pornography or similar type of imagery, I was actually experiencing, tremendous mood balance and clarity. I was learning, I was growing, I was becoming more empowered. I found my voice. I could truly experience and show my passions and find my place and become ultimately the being God wanted me to be. I believe that God wanted me to go through this process, and I'm so grateful I went through this process, because it was such a stark experience that it forced me to make a complete change. I would hate to be semi-addicted to pornography and be semi-living a half life. Mm-hmm. I want to live a complete full life, and that's what I have experienced. I have completely transformed on every level, and that's what we call superpowers in the NoFap programs. And really, these superpowers they feel like superpowers because they've been deadened for so long from these dopamine addictions. But all we're doing is allowing ourselves to heal and to experience the light of God to come into us. And our body knows on a cellular level, it has an inherent intelligence on how to restore perfect balance on a neurological, physiological, level. And all we need to do is simply clean our house, clean our minds, strip ourselves of our fears and our addictions, to allow ourselves to grow again.
So if you're, if someone's listening to this podcast right now who is recognizing some of the similarities in your story with maybe what they're experiencing right now, what would you tell them would be one of the first steps? And if they're realizing pornography has become a problem for them?
Well, it takes some time to make these connections, but I can tell people that this is all connected. Sexual health cannot be, despite Western medicine trying to make us think that we can have one pill for one area of our body. It's all interlinked. All the compartments of our body, the systems in our body, all flow together. Our sexual and our physical health are completely inseparable. Our relational health is completely inseparable. Our spiritual life is completely inseparable. And our passions and our mission in life are completely inseparable. It's all tied together. So it takes some time to, first of all, to rebuild the dopamine levels and receptors again. Once that process starts again, you'll notice increased energy levels, increased drive, because dopamine is a very interesting neurochemical. It's actually sort of linked to the will of God, because it is really our drive and our determination and our passion in life. But when those are depleted because of the loud noise of the super stimulus of pornographic ejaculatory addiction, we no longer are able to have that will and that drive. So the first step to restoring physical health and that drive towards physical and relational health, which is our sexual health too, is to restore our dopamine receptors and our dopamine levels. And we do that. We can do that with our partner. This process actually should be open. We should not have any shame. This is an addiction. And just like an addiction to any drug, there should be no shame. And we should include our partners in this process and be fully open with what we're experiencing and what our goals are and how we want to tie that into our future behaviors in our relationship. With, practicing bonding behaviors, practicing semen retention. There are so many myths, and these are all really, a lot of them are excuses. They're cultural excuses. They're personal excuses for not giving up these addictions and the fear of trying something new on your own. I want to challenge people to let go of everything they've heard and actually start to research and empower themselves and make their own decisions and forge their own paths in life.
Yes. Yeah, I can't stress that enough. And that's why I love to have varying opinions on the podcast and all sorts of viewpoints. So, to unlearn and expand awareness and take the choice of what is their goal. I'm sure some people are listening to this and they're like, you know what, that's bunk. I want to still watch my pornography. I do enjoy that.
Well, I will say one thing, if that's what they want to do, then I can tell them that it's not if, it's when they will experience porn-induced erectile dysfunction at some point. And at that point, like most people, men that do join the NoFap forums, they join because they've actually hit the end of the road. They no longer can even perform sexually with their partner. And sometimes they cannot even perform to their most highly geared, neurologically geared pornography that they are familiar with, that they use all the time. They actually get to that point of what's called desensitization.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a real thing for everything that you use as a tool, as a sexual tool, or, just kind of understanding what is the reason I want to bring this into my life, and is it sustainable? And what's my choice, and you were just saying, if they want to choose that, they're going to choose consequences later down the road. I mean, that's pretty much what you're choosing. And so
this is a warning. It's a warning. It's a warning. I can give all men listening right now a warning that, and women too, they're going to experience this too. They will actually be forced to make this change at some point. They're just delaying the process. And it seems like there's some reward, because this is a dopamine cycle addiction that you feel you're getting a reward, just like in dopamine addiction to food or anything else. You feel you're getting a reward, but you're never actually getting satisfied. You're actually getting further and further away from satisfaction.
Yeah. So when someone has realized, hey, I do want connection, I do want sexual wellness, optimal sexual wellness for myself. You were saying the mating and bonding and having an understanding of those differences can help start guiding some of those choices. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so basically what the Eastern traditions have found out is that they can supplant and hardwire bonding behaviors to satisfy those intense mating behaviors, which we can't ignore. They exist. But we can actually satisfy that while building long-term, sustainable, connective, deep relationships that we truly want and desire. And we do that because bonding and mating have both evolved over hundreds of thousands of years as behavioral pathways in our mammalian brain. The bonding behaviors were based around building deep connective relationships with our family, with our babies, with our friends, with community. So what we're doing is we're actually approaching our relationships on a deeper, more connective level, rather than just experiencing this never-ending cycle of dopamine crashes that climactic driven or ejaculatory based sex, goal-driven sex brings. We're actually building oxytocin on a neurological level in deep layers of connective relating on a psycho-spiritual level, So bonding behaviors include like deep listening, honoring feelings, deep communication, really talking through things. We get into the intimacy of like caressing, foreplay, sensuality, just more of the dance and the process, rather than just a focus solely on getting to that ejaculation event.
That orgasm driven, which I don't know, it's like a cascading effect, right? If I am only orgasm driven, then I can have performance stress, and that can cause dysfunction instead of really focusing on, the deeper connection, holistic experience instead of just a physical experience, or, I am just getting one need met. It's incredible when you broaden those needs and how many you can get met. You can get that connection met, you can get that trust met, you can get like a physical need met as well, when you're willing to go that deeper level. Bonding
behaviors bring men more in alignment with women because, it slows things down and connects men deeper with women. Women are actually just getting warmed up, so to speak, when men usually ejaculate. So it's never really fulfilling for women and men together. And then this process of, fatigue and distancing immediately takes place the moment that ejaculation takes place for men. So instead of going through that process, and you can actually equalize and connect more with your partner and stay connected rather than sort of getting ripped apart and having to leave the room. You can deeply embrace and, in timeless, union, together after, there's been, we get to a level for men that in Tantra, that higher level Tantra, that's called, it's called full body orgasm with ejaculation without semen release. So the main thing is, what I encourage men to do is to not ejaculate at all costs, because it's so valuable to your own growth inside and your relationships, and it's keeps your relationship so healthy and connective that there's really no reason to do it. I mean, unless you're actually trying to make a baby, there is no reason to ejaculate for men because of the immense toll it takes on men. It doesn't help in any way. It actually is sort of a waste because it, it's so powerful. It actually has the power to populate the entire United States of America. It contains all our most precious resources in our body. There's no reason to let that go when all it's doing is causing distancing and satiety in the relationship, because there's another term called satiety, which is, again, this destructive mating behavior causes satiety, which is basically this mating brain part of our brain that says, okay, I have actually succeeded in procreating with this novel mate. Now I'm ready to seek a new novel mate. This is such an insidious and archaic and reptilian aspect of our brain that has no place in modern relationships. Yet Western culture, this is the main way that we are taught to behave in relationships. So we actually have an incredibly poisonous and destructive behavior that we've been entrenched to believe is the correct way to have a relationship. But even the most well-planned and the best matched couples really do not stand a chance ultimately with these cycles. I actually am friends with Mariah Robinson, who wrote Cupid's Poisoned Arrow, and her husband passed away last year, Gary Wilson, who wrote Your Brain on Porn. Your Brain on Porn, that website was the first miracle that God gave me that started my journey of transformation. That's what started. It took me about a month, but I started making the connections. When I was I started practicing the NoFap journey. And that's when I made those connections. What Mariah told me is that the reason she wrote her book was, Gary focused on the neurology of pornography addiction. She focused on the neurology of mating versus bonding behaviors. Because she was wanted to really get to the root cause of why we go through these relationship and marriage divorces and cycles that go through the same pattern over and over and over, where we're incredibly suited. We have this intense honeymoon cycle, untamed, sex with semen ejaculation and climax, and then the satiety and the distancing starts to set in. Even though this couple is truly meant to be together, we have the wrong tools and wrong behaviors that we're practicing. So when we supplant the correct tools and behaviors for that, and we hardwire that in, we now are able to get the best of both worlds. We could still have actually the best, love making of our dreams, and still have long-term sustainable relationships that can last a lifetime. Because we're constantly practicing these bonding behaviors, which develop and instill these healthy relationships and marriages.
And how fulfilling they are and satisfying, the same satisfaction folks think they're getting with instant gratification and surface level relationships and quick to orgasm, that kind of thing. The level that I've seen people and have heard about when you are connected and have taken the time to invest and really understand how your relationship works and what you want out of that relationship, Tantra and all of that, just being able to be these avenues for that. What are some other maybe low-hanging fruit changes people can make who maybe this is the first time they're hearing these types of messaging and they're like, that sounds like a long road for me right now. I am all the way on this spectrum over here. And, it sounds like I'd want to be here with more fulfilling relationships and that kind of thing, but it sounds like a lot to do. What are some easier things or some of the I call them low-hanging fruit, but just something that you can start today?
Well, Western culture is transfixed with easy short-term solutions. There really is no pill that can replace true healing. It takes, commitment, determination, and sacrifice to have the kind of transformation, to have healthy, vibrant sexual function and physical life, and create the life and the body of our dreams, and the relationships of our dreams. So really what I'll say is there are plenty of support and resources of other men and women just like you and just like me that can help to simply start the journey of quitting the addiction to pornography and ejaculation in that cycle. Once you quit pornography and ejaculation, you are like there. That the beautiful transformations you experience will start taking place. And once you simply let go of your fear and try this, you'll actually never go back. You'll never want to go back. All the men and women that are on the NoFap journey never want to go back once they get a taste of what life can really be like. Because you're right, it's an illusion. We think that we're somehow getting happy with these addictions, but it's a dopamine mirage that is, we're perpetually chasing downward instead of upward. So I think there is no actual replacement for quitting this intense dopamine destructive addiction. That is the core first teaching to start this journey in my book. And my book actually is about sexual, physical, and relational health. And I have what I'm talking about here is neurological and relational health. And this relates to sexual dysfunction on a neurological level and a relational level. And I also cover in the second part of my book, organic ED. So for those that actually do have or feel that they want to perform better, or maybe do have some form of organic ED, I can guarantee people that if they follow the different practices that I recommend in my book, all of them, wholeheartedly and with discipline and determination, they will see massive transformation in their sexual health. There is no form of ED, whether that's neurological or organic, any form of ED that we cannot resolve. And that's the empowerment I'm giving to people. I believe I might have the only book that provides a holistic solution to the core underlying source of neurological and organic ED that men and women are experiencing.
Yeah. So as a behavior change specialist myself, understanding, yes, you can have a strong desire to want to be better, to have, strong relationships, and understand that something's happening, that you're not liking the side effects. So when I'm saying low-hanging fruit, I guess, what are the things that they can start today that don't sound like a mountain, but at least gets those first steps up?
Well, the first step I would recommend is getting a sexual health coach that has gone through this process. I got one in my beginning of my process. Noah Church, shout out to Noah Church, who has been another leader. He's a young man, another leader in this pornography movement. He's a young man that experienced ED as a virgin. This is a reality that now that the results are coming in from this 2-decade-long great pornography experiment, we're finding that even virgins are incapable of having the first sexual experience of their lives and being robbed of that connection and experience and relationship that they deserve, that's their God-given right. And so because of the craziness that's happening right now with the results that are coming in, it is causing a rebellion now where, young men are just fed up. They've had enough, and they are taking the power into their own hands because they are depressed, they're scared and terrified of where our society has led them. If you can imagine your first sexual experience not being able to have that because you're having a relationship with a woman or man on a virtual device, how horrifying that would be when you cannot have a real life connective experience. As far as low-hanging fruit, I would recommend just start with getting support. Put the intention out there that you want to have a different life. And, I have to say, it may take men hitting rock bottom to actually want to make this change. And that's where I'm asking women to help out with men, because men are and women, but largely men are under war right now with their neurology. They don't know what's happening in the neurology. They are addicted on a deep level, highly addicted, and they don't know how to get out. They don't even know that they have a problem. And It may take actually getting to the point where they have PIED, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, and their relationships are deteriorated to the point where they're cycling in and out of relationships or can't have a relationship before they'll actually make this decision to do this. Just like any other addiction to alcohol or a drug, we may make all kinds of excuses and may not actually make that change until we hit rock bottom. But I'm trying to warn people with this knowledge to empower themselves ahead of time that you don't need to wait till you hit rock bottom. You don't have to wait till you experience erectile dysfunction and you're unable to have a fulfilling, meaningful relationship before deciding to actually make this what appears to be a very simple ask on paper, which is to simply stop watching pornography. It's not simple because this is an addiction. It's, again, I've seen the struggles that men and women go through on the NoFap forums, but ultimately make that intention and get the help, get the support from an expert coach who's already navigated these difficult waterways and can guide you in this process. So that's the low-hanging fruit I would suggest.
Yeah, support system. And, you know, there's always a start to every journey, and just knowing that, you know, boost your why. I'm going to share that for everybody. You know, you have to ask yourself why these changes are important to you. When you have a strong why, you'll be able to work through some of those setbacks or, you know, some of those days that it seems impossible. You know, like you had said, your why was not, you didn't want to feel like this anymore. You, and then you started to find some energy, and that fog is lifted when a lot of people start tapping into their potential. When some of these barriers, unhealthy barriers, are removed, it's just an amazing process to watch. And one thing I love, you know, for being a wellness coach and getting to see those journeys happen and unfold as well. But I'd love to hear, you know, where can everyone find you? What platforms they can purchase the book? So give you all your socials out.
Okay. My book, You Are Not Broken, is available on Amazon. It's in paperback, Kindle, and audio. And I actually did the audio in my own voice, so it's really fun. I really encourage people to, you know, look at the audio. The Kindle and the paperback have some very inspiring color photos in each chapter. The layout's beautiful, so I encourage people to really get the audio and the paperback, because they can get the paperback or the Kindle and they can highlight areas that they want to remember, and they can come to the book when they're feeling afraid, lost, confused. Because again, this is very real. I've been through this journey. I went through the most difficult time of my life, and there are millions of men and women just like me that are going through this traumatic time in their lives right now with no hope. And I want to offer empowerment to all of them, that they can take their lives into their own hands. I want to encourage people to drop all the fears they have that are holding them back, because the distance between the ideal image we hold of ourselves and where we are right now is not as far as we think. But going back to my website is brookehazen.com. That's BROOKEHAZEN.com. And that's where you can find links and resources to like NoFap forum, coaches, different like porn blocking sites for your telephone. But you can also get the book from my website, and I can encourage people to, through the links for Amazon, but I encourage people to sign up for the newsletter too, because I'd love to keep people aware of seminars that I might be having in the future. I'm thinking about doing some intensives for people that have read the book and are very serious about wanting transformation in their lives, sort of like a transformation encouragement seminar. Yeah, that's where you can find me, brookehazen.com. and I have all the links to purchase the different books. I have the paperback and Kindle in Spanish and Chinese also.
Wonderful. I love it. Thank you so much. Really excited for those who are looking for an answer right now, and they're unable to find something that's fulfilling and long-term that they're looking for. So
I just want to say that I dedicated this book to God. I didn't write this book to make any money. I priced it very affordably. I actually, during this journey that I went through, when I was seeing these miracles happen in my life, at some point, I don't remember how or when, but I made a promise to God that I would write a book. And this is the result of that promise that I made to God. And it's led me now to doing this podcast. But I would not be where I am today if it was not for God, because remember, I had to blaze this trail all by myself. There was no answers for me. And it was God that showed me the pathway. And I believe that God is using me as a tool for empowerment and enlightenment for others to be able to follow this protocol and this journey that I'm recommending for people to follow.
That's beautiful. I love everyone who's, dedicated to their mission and knows how to connect with a higher power and how that gives them energy and fulfillment and goals in life. So thank you so much for sharing that and, paving the way for a lot of people who may be alone and scared right now. So I really appreciate that. It's so wonderful to have you on the podcast. For all those who are listening, thank you so much. Don't forget, we are just about to our 100th episode, and we are having our 100th episode party on May 28th. You can get those tickets on our website, saltysexcast.com. Please follow us on social media. And if you're feeling extra generous, we would always love to have reviews on Apple. So thank you. Bye.